to get into, this is so funny, but to get into the School of Journalism, and you got to understand, this is a long time ago. This is 1980. So it was very much a print-oriented approach. But to get into the College of Journalism, which is really the College of Arts and Letters at the University of South Florida, you had to take a typing test. And if you couldn't type 40 words a minute, you couldn't get into the class. So the biggest challenge of getting into journalism classes was taking the typing test. So I actually took a class in typing to learn how to type, and then applied, got into the journalism school. But truthfully, it ultimately is a liberal arts degree. There's a few classes in journalism where you learn about the inverted pyramid and you understand how to ask questions, and they'd give you like a bunch of facts and you'd have to try to organize them into what was important and what wasn't important. A couple other classes in the theory of all of this, but when it comes to what I do now, television, we had one day in the 2 years of the journalism school, 4 years of college, we had one day where we had a camera. And that was one camera shared among the entire university. And you had one day to go out and try and see if you could shoot and tell a story. And I think, if I remember correctly, I did a story about the price of beer on campus at the Rathskeller, I guess you'd call it, at both schools. They called it the empty keg. And, that was really what I kind of learned in college. So when I graduated, I didn't know what a VO was, which means voiceover. I didn't know what a SOT was, which means sound on tape. I didn't know what a package was, which is, the completed story that airs on the newscast. I didn't learn any of that until I really got to my first job, and it was really on-the-job training. So I look at college sort of as it was an experience of growing up, learning responsibility, making sure that when you have a professor giving you a deadline that you provide the deadline, that you meet it, and so I wouldn't say that college taught me a lot about my profession, but it certainly taught me a lot about being prepared for whatever profession I was going to get into. I will say this, I had one professor who challenged you to think for yourself, Dr. Manny Lukoff, about specifically studying law. So we were studying about how law works with broadcast, and the FCC. And what he had us do was read cases, and cases, of course, are just interesting stories, and not only spit back what the story was, but then discuss and understand why it was ruled the way it was ruled, whether it was by the FCC or whether it was by a court. And so that teaches you to think for yourself. And then I had another professor, Linda Yackel, who was a phenomenal teacher because she taught me, I would say, essentially how to write. Because of what we do in journalism, we have a very finite space or a finite amount of time, and so you have to choose words that are going to have the most direct impact, but you have to use the fewest words possible. So if you look at what we call a television script, a story that I have written for the newscast, which most stories are not 2 minutes, they're 1:59, they all have to be under 2 minutes. It's a very short page of information.